to The Link. I'm Joni Wedler for Nutmeg TV, and we're here for a very special two-part series on the first Governor's Horse Guard. Joining me today is retired Captain Gary Brooks and Sergeant Amanda Matava, who is the historian for the first Company Governor's Horse Guard and Connecticut Military Cavalry Militia Unit. And so let's start there. Gary, this is actually a militia unit and one of several in the state.
Yes, it is. There's 2 horse guards in the state of Connecticut and 2 foot guards. It's the only state in the United States that has a horse guard and foot guard like the Queen of England. Our main focus, our main objective, if the National Guard were called out and activated out of state, we take their place as the home guard. So the state's not left unprotected.
Right.
And we also did that during World War II. Okay,
so that means, and we're going to talk about recruitment in a little bit, but that means that any of your members across the state have to understand certain military protocol, right? And
yes.
So Amanda, what does that typically look like?
So typically we learn military customs and courtesies. We learn how to wear our uniforms properly. We learn how to address those of higher rank and provide them with the due respect owed to them, how to behave among other militia units, military units, and how to walk in formation, march in formation, on the ground, not on horseback, and also how to fall in formation, out of formation, and those sorts of things that we have to do day-to-day basis.
Okay, now these aren't full-time positions, right? These are not full-time positions. So these are people in the community who have joined or are chosen to be part of the Governor's Horse Guard, probably the Governor's Foot Guard too, I would imagine, same kind of recruitment process, which we'll talk about the recruitment process. And this goes back to the 1700s.
It does.
Can you talk about the formation of the Governor's Horse Guard?
It was formed in 1778 by Thomas Young Seymour. It was the elite of the elite at that particular point in time. These were some of the most important people in the country at that time. Oliver Wolcott Jr. You've got Celestine Highway here. Well, the Dean brothers, the Silas Dean brothers, were in the unit. Samuel Colt was in, Peter Colt was one of the first members of the unit. Oliver Wolcott Jr., as I mentioned, Caldwell. The list is the first secretaries of the state, the first secretaries of defense under Washington came from the Governor's Horse Guards. These were the people.
Now, as we're talking about this, I want to have some pictures shown so we can get a sense of some of the earlier shots. So maybe we can call for our first couple of photos, and then we'll stop with Raymond Hurd. So, Gary, if that's Jamestown there, and we see, what year would this be?
1907.
Okay, so not that far back, considering the 1700s. And then you mentioned George Washington. If we call for the second photo there, Major Kandarian? Okay, crossing the George Washington Bridge.
He's on a horse named Skipjack. And we reenacted the delivery of the Declaration of Independence from Philadelphia Independence Hall to the Hartford Current. The way it took place back in 200 years prior at that time. And it took us 5.5 days to ride back from Philadelphia, switching horses all the time. That shot going over the George Washington Bridge is the first time in history that the George Washington Bridge was actually closed both ways for us to go across.
To allow for that horse.
We took the wrong entrance on. He was going over with the chase car behind him, and our truck with the transport horses we were going underneath. So we met him on the opposite side.
Oh my goodness. And we're going to look at Raymond Hurd here. And can you tell us, we tried to do a little bit of research on Raymond Hurd. We didn't find too much, so we knew that you would know.
Raymond was born in 1889. I had the pleasure of interviewing him when he was, I believe, 98 and a half. He told me everything about the Horse Guard back then in his time. Growing up with his father as actually the major of the Horse Guard for 12 years. He became the first sergeant of the Horse Guard and was also a bugler. And in that shot of 1907, he was there in 1907 at Jamestown and told me about everything that they did down there, going up and down the Potomac on the steamship Hartford. It was just amazing. And
Amazing
astounding.
that you had an opportunity to really sit with him.
It was an honor.
Yeah, absolutely.
His father requisitioned horses when they got to Washington for the troops. And he said it was unbelievable. He said when the bugle echoed and played, the horses knew just what to do.
So Amanda, or I'm going to say Sergeant Matava, why was this formed? What was the original intent?
So the original intent, before we were chartered, was for some men that were veterans of the Revolutionary War to gather to form a state militia in order to escort the governor to and from Hartford and New Haven. At that time, from basically the 1700s, the early 1700s until 1878, Hartford and New Haven behaved both as state capitals. So the governor was traveling along with the General Assembly back and forth to the two capitals. And so there were foot guards who were, infantry escorts, and then we had the horse guards, which were cavalry. And so there were two units based out of New Haven area, and our unit, which is now in Avon, was originally based out of the Hartford area. And we had a armory on the corner of Arch and Main Streets in Hartford. So every week they would gather and drill, and then when the governor, had to travel or they were called upon to escort him or other dignitaries that came to visit the state, such as General Washington when he came, Lafayette, other people that were traveling about the state, they would get on their horses and they would escort for safety. Back in that time, there was a lot of wilderness in the state, so the roads that we travel today were very different. It was a lot of forests, a lot of small trails, and so they would need the safety and the trained people to help them.
To go with them.
Yep.
And chartered means what?
Charter means, well, they're official.
Okay.
They have a charter. They have certain specifications which qualifies this as a militia.
Okay. And so that happened in 1788, and there has been no break in the existence of this group. So.
No. We are the oldest continuous cavalry unit in the United States without a break in history.
That's really amazing.
And service.
Yeah.
How many states have cavalry units?
This is the only one that we know of. Arizona did have a horse guard under the governor. I think which probably went back to the towards the Texas Ranger style. But as far as I know, we are the only state in the United States that has a horse guard active.
And those of you who have seen the Horse Guard in action, and I have, it's very impressive. And we're going to talk about going to the presidential inaugurations as well, but who founded you originally?
Thomas Young Seymour.
Okay.
Founded us.
Okay.
He was a prominent individual from the Revolution under Washington. And at the battle, at the surrender of Saratoga with General Burgoyne, Washington was there, and he picked Thomas Young Seymour to escort the general on his surrender to Boston. On reaching Boston with the general, he became so acquainted with him as another cavalry individual that he presented him with his horse pistol holsters and his leopard skin cape, which he wore in parades. And to give up those particular items was really
A big deal.
A big deal. So he's the one that actually formed and founded and got the unit together.
Okay, and the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, visited Connecticut?
She did. Back during our anniversary, she was here, and her yacht was docked in New London. So they called out the 2 foot guards, they called out the 2 horse guards. The horse guard was lined up all on one side of the street, the foot guard lined up on the other side of the street, and the foot guard wears the reds with the busbies.
Yes.
So it looks like you're in England.
It does.
Well, she's driving down in the convertible, and she looks on both sides of the road, and she sees the horse guard, she sees the foot guard, and I heard her exclaim as she drove by where I was on the horse, "By Jove, I thought I left them home." She couldn't believe what she was saying.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? Who knew? I never had heard that story, and when I learned about it during prep for the interview today, I thought that was really amazing. I'm just going to read part of your mission statement is to serve the state whenever called upon in whatever capacity, emergencies, disasters, things like that you've already mentioned, traffic and crowd control, civil and community needs, and assistance to the National Guard. How often are you called upon for that type of assistance versus ceremonial assistance?
Well, it's not an everyday thing for us to be called to active duty.
Right.
Sergeant Matava can tell you a little bit. We were called to active duty during COVID.
Yes, we were. We were called to assist in building some temporary field hospitals outside of major hospitals around the state because and this was in March and April of 2020. So before, we really knew what was going on with the pandemic, we were anticipating hospital overflow. And so these hospitals, they're, large tents with electricity and heat and cots. And so we were, basically installing them as a precaution in case, the other hospitals were overflowed and we needed a place to put patients. And so all 4 militia units were asked to assist in that, and we put them up, and then, well, I think it was about a year later, took them all down because they actually were not needed, but that was the most recent thing that we did. I believe we also assisted with the blizzard of 2011 that hit the state in October. I believe it was 2011, just handing out water bottles and sort of supporting the community in those sorts of capacities. We've done search and rescues in the past, or horseback searches, done training of that sort as well. And most recently, we also had a few of our members train for a cybersecurity mission, which is also a really big, important thing for the state as well.
We've done a lot of search missions, looking for lost people in the woods. I've been on a few of those. And sometimes they're found, sometimes not so well. But we've been called out for that. There was one hurricane, I think it was in '76. We were in Niantic for training at camp, and they called us to active duty to evacuate the town and to take all the beds, mattresses from the camp, bring them into shelters inland and set them up. So we were on active duties, but they called us to do that for the state. There are various things that they can call us to active duty for. But the main thing is for emergencies, yes. But if the National Guard were activated and called out, we take their place as the Home Guard. And we did that during Desert Storm.
Very important. We're going to talk about all things horses in a little bit, but I do want to show some more of some of the photos that we have. Now, rifle and pistol teams, there we're looking at that. Do you carry rifles or pistols? Are you able to shoot? Is that, or do you train with rifles and pistols? Or was this something that they had before and it's not something that you're doing now?
They had a huge rifle pistol team. We had a full armory. We had the '03 Springfield rifles, which were the original '03 Springfield from '03. We had the Garand M1s. We had 45s, 38s. At the present time, I'm not sure what's in.
We have, we do train pistol and rifle shooting, and every year we have a qualification sort of like shooting competition amongst the militia units. So we do have some 9mm pistols that we train with, and those are kept in our armory. I don't know offhand if we have rifles kept in the armory, but we have been trained on those as well. And we do not any longer shoot from horseback, but that used to be a common occurrence at drill nights.
And let's look at the World's Fair. We have a picture here of 1907 that you so graciously provided us. I remember going to the World's Fair, not that one, but I do remember going to the World's Fair, and that was a big deal. And you look at all the riders here, as well as Sergeant Matava, you talked about some of the competitions. Let's take a look at shoot jumping, which is another photo that you have here. And the next three, actually, whenever the director decides to take that, we can see musical chairs and also a monkey drill, which, Captain Brooks, you are upside down. Those are your feet that they're holding, and you're upside down on that horse. Fearless rider, I must add. Yes. And so these are part of training, but to have a little fun as well. And does that kind of thing still happen today?
Not at the present time. Back then, I was very fortunate that when I was came in the unit, all of the stunts you saw there, whether it be the shoot jumping, standing on your head, also do Roman ridings, standing on top of two horses, vaulting. We had 3 gentlemen in our unit that were actually in the cavalry in World War II. Not make-believe, but it was the real cavalry. And they were in our unit. These are the gentlemen that taught me everything about horses, about the cavalry, about the acrobatics. He said, when we were bored, this is what we did. And this is what they taught us. So invaluable experience that I was able to receive from them.
And now you're able to give.
Now I'm able to give back.
Which is wonderful, and we're so delighted
Pass
to
it
have
forward.
you. Pass it forward. Now, tack and grooming, you talked about that, Sergeant Matava. We have a short clip here. We were just seeing some of that
Roman
riding, the monkey drills. And that was called the Roman riding. And
Here's a tack.
here is the tack. And so it's a very big part of what you all have to do. You have a beautiful facility, which we're also going to talk about, located right in Avon. But here you can see examples of, horses being groomed and readied for the drill that evening. Now, tell us about the drills a little bit. Sergeant Matava, you mentioned that every Thursday.
Every Thursday
is drill night. And what happens on drill night?
Yep. It's a tradition that goes back many years. Thursday night is drill night, 7 to 10. 7 is first formation. We all come to the drill shed. We gather. We are formed up. We're sent out to the barn with our riding assignments. So everyone is given a horse. Every week we might change horses. It really depends. But we're paired with horses that we ride well or that, needs to be ridden that week. And so we go into the tack room, we pull our tack, go to the picket line. It's a very routine sort of a thing that we do every week. Once we get our horses tacked up and groomed, we go out to the parade field and we ride for a couple hours doing formations. Sometimes we'll do a little trail ride at the end as well. We have a lot of trails on our property. But we work on equitation, we work on our formations and improving that, challenging ourselves a little bit each week with what we do. And
how many acres are in Avon?
There's 200 acres altogether.
Yeah.
100 across the street from us. We are on 37 military acres. We've just transferred from DEP another 47 acres.
It's wonderful. Across the street?
Across the street from where we are
Yeah.
is,
Where we see the horses as we're
Yes.
riding by? Okay.
is designated Horse Guard State Park.
Yes.
And
Wonderful.
The Horse Guard actually moved off of Ferncliff Mountain in West Hartford, and they were looking for a new home, and they found this one. It was owned by a veterinarian, Dr. Maxim. Well, they made a deal with the doctor to buy the property. The men got together, and it was, well, basically almost 200 acres. And they had to come up with $66,000. Well, they needed a down payment. And the unit was part of used to be Troop B, Connecticut National Guard Cavalry. Well, Troop B, on their retirement, bought 15 acres of land behind La Trattoria restaurant in Avon.
Yes.
They built a log cabin for their association. When they found out that we were in desperate need and we had to move and we needed a new home, their membership got together, sold their 15 acres, sold the cabin, and gave us the $15,000 to put us a down payment on the property.
That's fantastic. And so that is yours also there. And when you do any fundraising, you're a 501c3, or you're really under the state.
We're under the state, but I'm on the board of directors for the Friends of the Governor's Horse Guards, which is a 501c3.
Okay. And what are the Friends' responsibilities? I've heard of Friends of the Library, so same kind of thing?
Basically, yeah. We come up with fundraising ideas to raise money for the Horse Guard,
Okay.
For equipment for horses,
Okay.
anything that they may need, because at the present time there aren't a lot of donations of horses, so we have to purchase our own horses now.
You were telling me that, and that's hard for me to believe, because I would think after I saw the barn, and there are many public events at the Governor's Horse Guard location right there in Avon. You can go to their Facebook page, you can go to their website, and you can see upcoming events where you can tour as a public. The barn is incredible. The horses have the life of Riley, a wonderful, wonderful life for many horses who some may be coming out of retirement off the police force, but Hartford doesn't have a mounted police any longer. So that's an option that isn't available to you.
Correct.
So there may be folks watching who their horse is ready to go to another home, but not every horse is chosen. And there's a reason why. And we're going to talk about that in our next segment. But this has been fascinating, and we're going to look at recruitment, and we're going to look at horse acquisition and training of these animals, because they have to be in the public at parades and when you're working with them, and where you learned all of that. So stay with us for our next edition of The Link for part 2.